Today on the Transplant Helper, I'm going to share with you a few surprising facts about waiting for transplant that I really did not expect. Hit the subscribe button and the bell notification to become part of the Transplant Helper community. Hey folks, welcome back to Transplant Helper again today. My name is Jim Merle. Now, while I was waiting for transplant, there is no doubt in my mind it was probably the most difficult, the most trying, the most anxious time of my entire life. And I've said it many times here before on the program. I honestly believe that waiting for transplant is probably the hardest part of the whole process, but yet again, it's something that we're all going to have to do. Now, whether you wait a few hours, a few days, or a few years, waiting for a transplant can be extremely stressful, and oftentimes you're going to be faced with situations and feelings that you're not really expecting. So I'm going to share with you today about 5 of those that I experienced. They may be very much different from what you've experienced. And by the way, if you do see that none of these kind of match with you, please go in the comments below and share your experiences or your surprising fun facts in the comments below, because perhaps you will have something in common with someone else that I honestly do not have. Okay, so with that being said, let's jump right in. Here it is. Number 1. Hygiene practices were questionable. Okay, now this may be TMI or too much information, as we say here in the South, but I have to admit, pre-transplant, when I felt like pretty much garbage all day long, my hygiene practices were oftentimes questionable. I mean by that, there were many a days when I got up, I didn't change my clothes, I didn't take a shower, I didn't really worry about anything. I think I did change my underwear every day, most days at least. But basically speaking, I oftentimes did not put hygiene at the top level of my life. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that basically all I did all day was go from the bed to the couch, back to the bed and back to the couch, and maybe catch a meal in between, maybe go to the bathroom once or twice. I just didn't spend a lot of time in the shower. Now, a lot of that came in from the fact that honestly, if I did take a shower, that would cost me hours and hours of needing to rest, even those 5-minute quickie showers. When I got out of the shower, a lot of times I would just collapse, be 2, maybe 3-hour naps that would be needed. It was just not worth it. On top of that, for the majority of time while I was listed for transplant, I actually had a PICC line placed right here in my arm. And one of the things that you're really precautioned about with a PICC line or really central lines or anything like that is not to get those things wet, because getting them wet could not only bring infection, could bring potential contamination, that sort of thing. So again, a shower was just something I wasn't on my top of my priorities. As a matter of fact, to be completely honest with you, for the most part, with the exception of going to church on Sundays and Wednesday nights for Bible study, and then my home health care nurse coming around, I think it was on Tuesday most of the time, honestly, I didn't take a shower very often. I just kind of avoided that, and I really kind of scheduled those things around if and when I had to go somewhere. Now, granted, I wasn't getting out. It wasn't like I was sweating or anything during the day. I wasn't getting out and getting dirty. I was confined to my house pretty much. So that kind of in my mind at least made that something that was kind of logical. And with a PICC line, I would oftentimes shower just a few minutes before the home health nurse could come around, because I thought to myself, well, if it were to get contaminated or infected in any way, she would be changing that dressing almost immediately. But nonetheless, to be honest with you, that kind of caught me off guard. And that is the fact that hygiene practices were oftentimes questionable. Number 2, emotions were almost always high. Okay, again, waiting for transplant can be difficult, particularly emotionally, and oftentimes I would have swings of emotion that would be very severe, whether it be anger, whether it be happiness, excitement, sadness, depression, whatever. My emotions would kind of be all over the place, and oftentimes I would be very short with people, even myself. I lack patience, because basically your whole mind at that time gets consumed with that transplant and the worry and the concern and the anxiety that comes with just having an unknown in front of you. And so because of that, emotions will be really high. Now, this is one of the things that you need to let your caregiver stop for just a moment. If you're a caregiver, listen to me. It's not always going to be your loved one's fault if their emotions, particularly their anger levels and their anxiety, gets the best of them, because it oftentimes will. So just kind of be patient, just sit back and take notes if you want to, bring it up later after transplant, but nonetheless expect that emotions can be very high. Number next, for me at least, medications were basically horrible. Now, again, I was awaiting a heart transplant, so nearly all of the medications I was on were basically heart/cardiovascular/pulmonary type of medication related, whether it be the fact that I was on a fluid pill. What is the actual term for that? Whatever that is. You know what I'm talking about, where I would basically want to pee my pants every 30 seconds, or for the most part, even the worse than that, I was on a medication called Coreg that actually worked with my heart and its function, at least tried to keep that up a little bit, tried to keep my blood pressure balanced and in check. That medication was horrible because if I basically moved very quickly any direction, even just as much as doing this, I couldn't do this. Is that annoying you? I couldn't do that. I couldn't bend over. I couldn't get up quickly. If I did, I would nearly pass out. My eyes would go black, and oftentimes I think I did pass out a few times because of those medications. And that was one of those things that even though the medications post-transplant are a lot of fun and there are some side effects, some of those medications I was on pre-transplant, again, cardiovascular type medications, for me at least, were far worse than what I'm dealing with now. So just expect that there may be some issue. Medications may be horrible. Number next, and again, I'm being honest with you here again, oftentimes my thoughts were morbid. Okay, my thoughts were just morbid. Again, I was facing death according to what the doctors assumed and what they thought, the evidence that they had. They were constantly, every time I would go in the clinic, they would kind of be shortening that time up and saying, well, you got, a year to live, 6 months to live, a few weeks to live, whatever that changed up. But my thoughts kind of got morbid. Now, it's not that I just was fixated on death or anything like that, but I was beginning to start to accept the fact that may very well be what my future held, that death, as far as this life, may occur. And so I spent a lot of time, I think they call it, I'm trying to think of the term, but kind of nesting, if you will, kind of getting things prepared. A lot of times I would spend days, especially when my wife and kids were away at school and work, I would spend days sitting on my computer, going through, checking passwords, taking passwords off of different things, putting documents on the home screen where they could find them, writing down those, just giving them access to everything, kind of preparing or setting things up for me if I would pass from this life. And sometimes I would get and I would organize, or I would throw away things or give away things or whatever. Sometimes my thoughts got kind of morbid, and even to the point, and this is finally the worst, I'm admitting some of this stuff to you, I can still remember the many a days, and it's bad to say, I'm bad to say even now, but I can still remember many a days when I would hear that life flight, that rescue helicopter kind of fly over the neighborhood or whatever, and I would run outside and look up the sky at that helicopter as they're taking a patient to the trauma centers nearby, and I would think to myself, that might be mine. And that was an awful thought. The moment I would think it, I would kind of retract and say, oh, that's horrible. How could you think that way? But the reality was that eventually, and it did, that my organ donation was going to come from a deceased donor and going to come from someone who had been through a trauma. And so as bad as that was, my thoughts were morbid. And so that's kind of what would run through my mind. And I would try to block it. I would try to take it away, but that would be the reality. So that's something I was kind of surprised by. And again, lastly here, to try to lighten the mood, make things a little bit more positive than the last, I would say this: my days were valuable. Okay, my days were valuable to me. Every moment, every waking moment, even though I would sometimes be self-consumed and sometimes be worried or anxious, I would just try to just basically relish every moment of my life. And I don't know if that's something that's kind of normal between someone if they're potentially facing death or whatever, but for me and for some others I've spoken with, that was kind of typical. You just kind of want to just take in every moment that you could and value those moments and spend time with your family and your friends and your loved ones and whoever you cared about. Just spend some quality time with them. And there were even a few different times I'm thankful that we were able to do this, even while I was listed for transplant. And kind of the general rule of thumb was I was supposed to be sitting at home, sitting by the phone, or later on in the hospital, but sitting close to the transplant center, waiting on that unforeseen call and all, and just kind of fixated on that. A lot of times I would just say, you know what, forget it. We're going to go off on vacation. We're going to go outside of that little bubble where we're supposed to stay. I got permission from my doctors to do it, or at least let them know. But we went on vacation, and we just took a few days here and there, even though I would have potentially missed an organ if it would have come available then. We just took some time, and I spent time to value those days, so to relish in those days. And I would always advise that. So that was kind of something I did not expect. I did not expect how valuable time might one day be, but it certainly was. And I've tried, and I've not been good at this, but I've tried post-transplant, that even though, I've kind of got over that hump, at least that hump, all of us. By the way, let me tell you something. The death rate is 1 to 1. Pretty much everybody's going to die. But I kind of got past that part of things, but I still try to just just stop and take in moments and appreciate the wonderful gift I've been given, and take every moment, every day, every hour, every minute even, and take that in as a valuable piece of time, and take that in as something that I really need to soak in and enjoy. That's my advice, at least. So until next time, again, get in the comments. Tell me if you had any other experiences than this. Stay stronger, my friends.